So that's exclusive stuff. Wow, yeah, we actually cranked through content today. Let's see here. So we did recap stuff. We did what's coming on Music Mondays over the course of the next week or so. We did recruiting. We did exclusives. Yeah, I think we're good to go, my friends. I think we are good to go. So we're going to do a little bit of a segment here where I break down the Music Mondays podcast, per usual. So again, we're going to get the 2026 guide fully up and completed for the Music Mondays podcast. So per usual, let's go head over to Twitter and let's go see what we have here. So pop over to Twitter to see what we got. All right, you guys know the drill, man. Per usual, tweets are always in the same format every single week. You guys know that. But we're gonna go take a trip down memory lane here. It's been a while since I've actually like explained this story. I think it's been like at least like a year or so, like maybe like 2 years. But I'll try to keep it relatively short and sweet. But when it comes down to the Music Mondays podcast and the Music Mondays platform in general, I explained this at the Music Mondays Awards, and I explained this a few times, right? So I'm not gonna like dive into super detail, right, and take up too much of the show's time. But um, the Music Mondays podcast, how did it become a thing? Where did the concept come from? Why do we take submissions on Twitter and things like that, right? So lots of questions that we do get, and this is definitely for anybody who isn't familiar, right? So I started the Music Mondays podcast back in 2021, I think 2021 or 2022, and it was the first time that I was an independent journalist that was actually freelance, right? I had left the company that I was with for actually I kind of founded as well, but I was with them for probably like 3 or 4 years, and then the first time that I was a freelance independent journalist was like 2021, 2022-ish, right? And then initially I didn't know what to kind of do with my time, right? Because I didn't really like have a platform to publish on. I didn't really have any like drive or incentive, right? So I was like, fuck, I need to do something with all this content, right? Because I just felt like I had so much information and so much tips and tricks to give, and the underground environment was super different back then as well, right? You're talking like 5-6 years ago. And yeah, initially the idea for Music Mondays didn't come until I started to do the show, right? Because I did the show first. And that's what's very interesting about it is initially I uploaded, I think like the first 20 episodes of the Music Mondays podcast are actually on the Zomb Slays channel and not the Music Mondays channel, right? Because I didn't know what this was actually going to look like. I just knew that I wanted to have a podcast segment where I gave, underground independent artists tips and tricks and talk about underground politics and, the music scene at the time and things like that, right? So it would be a more like a current, like up-to-date show, so to speak, right? And then eventually I got the idea. I think one of my homies suggested it or something like that, where I was like, damn, we should probably start reacting to music, right? And because I think like the first like 10 episodes of the Music Mondays podcast was just me yapping. It was just me literally yapping about, the state of the underground, what about this, old stories and things like that, right? And then I was like, okay, like let's use this time a little bit more wisely here and let's kind of give some artists a chance to shine, right? So initially we started taking submissions relatively early, for sure. Like I said, probably like the first like 20 episodes or so. And the thing is like I didn't really like it was interesting because I think curating the music first was kind of interesting to me because I was curating on the Zomb Slays account, right? Because like Music Mondays didn't have a logo. It wasn't even born yet. It was just a show where I was just kind of talking about, like I said, the underground politics and things like that, right? Music politics, that is. And initially, like even the first name was like Zomb Slays Music Mondays, like it was a very like Zomb Slays thing, right? It wasn't its own brand yet at all, and that's what was interesting about it. And then eventually when I started taking submissions on the Zomb Slays account and people were kind of wanting me to react to more and more music, I was like, all right, shit, this is starting to become a thing, right? And I was doing it on like a monthly basis, and then I got up to like a weekly basis, and then eventually, we started having like Music Mondays regulars, especially by like the time 2022 rolled around. So we've always taken submissions on Twitter, whether it be through my account or again through the Music Mondays account that you guys know today. And the reason being for that, right? Because again, this is 2021, so there's no Blue Sky, there's no Threads, there's no alternative, right? Like Twitter's the only real text-based platform where you could kind of um, curate from all sides of the internet, whether it be art designers, musicians, sports people, you name it. Twitter was kind of like the place, and it still is, realistically, right? But it was just easier for us to kind of curate submissions that way. Um, just so we could have them all in one spot. And again, this is a live show, right? So again, we wanted to keep things free flow and make sure that we had all the submissions in one spot, right? Like, if somebody submits over on Instagram and then there's the Discord submissions and then blah, 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 right? We're pulling up 50 windows just to get through all the submissions during a show, which just isn't practical, right? It's just not practical. It makes for a boring show. It takes me longer to pull up submissions and things like that, right? So it keeps the show relatively free flow as well. And then, of course, it kind of brings everybody together. So that's why we do take submissions on Twitter. I don't see that changing in the foreseeable future. Again, just because this is where our community is, right? This is where a lot of people's communities are. We might alternatively like open submissions in like another fashion, right? Like take submissions from like two different places, like whether we take submissions on Blue Sky and Twitter, or Threads and Twitter and X, Y, or Z, right? So that's kind of up in the air as well. But again, Twitter's always been our home. It's kind of like the foundation of Music Mondays, right? So that just makes our job easier, right? So that's why we do take submissions on Twitter. And then, of course, Music Mondays kind of rolled into what you see today, long story short, right? So outside of that, how you do submit to the Music Mondays podcast is as follows. So per usual, tweets are always in the same format every single week. The only thing that does change is the date. So again, make sure you double check the date and make sure that you're submitting for a show that hasn't happened yet. Like I always say, you guys would be surprised at how many submissions we do get that are for shows that are a couple weeks old, shows that are years old, and things like that, right? So we do get a lot of like late submissions like that. So again, make sure you double check the date and make sure that you're submitting for a show that hasn't happened yet. But per usual, tweets are always in the same format. Like I always say, artists and creative submissions are open for live reviews of Music Mondays, live on February 9th, 2026 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at twitch.tv/Zomb Slays, which is here and now. And of course, contrary to our name, Music Mondays, we reacted to pretty much everything here on the show. Obviously, everything from vocals to instrumentals to acoustic covers to remixes to photography, videography, digital art, merch, unreleased music, vlogs, you name it, edits, we've reacted to it, right? So again, feel free to drop whatever it is that you create down below, because again, we do like to kind of cater to a multitude of creatives, right? Because a lot of people are multi-talented. A lot of designers are also vocalists. A lot of vocalists are also engineers. A lot of engineers are also producers, right? So it goes back and forth, and we want to make sure that we give everybody a chance to get your submissions in. So again, if you feel like you deserve some spotlight here on Music Mondays, definitely drop your links and portfolios below. And of course, if you'd like to submit your music, artwork, fashion, or digital creation, drop your links and portfolios below. All our forms are welcome. We do have a 3-hour show limit. Again, that's just to keep the show a little bit more palatable to watch back. Again, one could argue that a 3-hour show is still a little bit long to watch back, but it's definitely not as long as some of our earlier shows where, we used to go upwards of like 5 to 6 hours, and it was just insane. So we do have a 3-hour show limit. So again, just keep that in mind. And then again, submissions are free. They always have been free. They always will be free. But the only thing that we do ask is that you're following Music Mondays on Twitter to be eligible. Again, not only does that help grow our platform, but that does pay respect to everybody else that does wait for their submissions to be reacted to every single week here on the show. So again, the only thing that we do ask is that you're following Music Mondays on Twitter before you do submit. And of course, Patreon subscribers submissions are played first every single week here on the show. So if you're subscribed to the Music Mondays Patreon at any tier, whether that be basic, advanced, or premium, you gain access to a multitude of goodies, including early access content. But what you do gain access to is the Music Mondays Fast Pass, which again, for the duration that you're pledged to the Music Mondays Patreon, allows all of your submissions to be played first every single week here on the show. So again, huge shout out to all of our Music Mondays Patrons, man. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Outside of that, one last thing that we do have to go through is that submissions do close about a couple hours before the show starts. So again, just keep that in mind. Submissions do close when the show goes live. So again, a good rule of thumb is that if the show is live, submissions are closed. Again, like I said, we are a live show, so we like to keep things free flow and make sure that all of our submissions kind of stay in that organic order, right? Because we don't want somebody to come in, submit late, and then they kind of cut somebody off that's been waiting, for their submission to be reacted to and things like that, right? So again, you have like roughly, I'd say like 6.5 or so days to get your submissions in. So again, plenty of time. But again, just keep that in mind. Submissions do close about a couple hours before the show starts. And then outside of that, we actually did the brand new 2026 Music Mondays how to submit a guide about the show here tonight. So again, that'll be uploaded on the Music Mondays YouTube channel as well. But again, we do have the 2025 version up on the Music Mondays YouTube channel now, where I kind of break down the Music Mondays podcast like I just did in a little bit more detail. I kind of break down the lore and the history, why we take submissions on Twitter and things like that, right? So again, definitely go check out the 2025 version before